Hello, everybody. Welcome back. As always, it's Scott with you, and it's time for another classic Canadian Monday. In 1990, the Skydiggers burst onto the Canadian music scene with their debut album and their timeless single, I Will Give You Everything, a song that has since become a Canadian classic. One of the gentlemen responsible for that song is Josh Finlayson from the Skydiggers, and I'm so happy to have him with me today in the record player. Hi, Josh. How are you?
Great, Scott. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. Where are you right now? Are you you're in Toronto, or are you?
I'm in I'm in Toronto at home. I live in Hyde Park, in the West End of Toronto.
Oh, awesome. Well, I apologize for the Canucks jersey. That's um,
Well,
it's been nearly 35 years, which means since the first album came out, which means you're an old guy like me and you remember record companies and radio stations and things like that that happened back then.
mhm.
Northern Pikes, Spirit of the West, Grapes of Wrath, and of course, you guys, the Skydiggers. Tell me a little bit about how this whole thing got started.
Well, Andy Mays and I, the singer in the band, grew up together. He's a few years older than I am. He's the same age as one of my brothers, and I've known him since I was probably about 5 years old. Um, and he was in grade 13 when I was came into grade 9. We went to the same high school, and by the end of my high school time, well, probably by around grade 10 or 11, I started playing in bands. It was, in that sort of era of, punk, new wave music where, anyone could play an instrument because they said they could. And that's how I started. And Andy kind of did the same, although he was a little older and didn't have as many people in his year at school that were doing that yet. But I played in my high school band. I moved over to London, England for a couple of years, and kind of uh, had our attempt at sort of finding our way over there, and had a big adventure ultimately. When I came back, he was leaving the band that he had been in, and we started hanging out and writing songs and doing some recording, and eventually by 1988 that evolved into the Skydigger. So I moved to England in 1982. I lived there till about 85. Came back and we started hanging out in 85 ish, and by 87, 88 we started the band started.
How did living in England,
And
obviously during that time in the early '80s? I mean, that was a lot of electronic music and that type of stuff. How did you guys wind up?
yeah, well, it was sort of sorry.
So, no, just going to say, how did you guys wind up with the style? I mean, totally the opposite of what was going on in England at that
So I mean, really, the influences on both of us were, bands like the Clash, a lot of the punk stuff, a lot of the very direct DIY stuff. But really, the reason what happened was when I moved back and we started hanging out, we started playing just the two of us. That's how we started, just as a duo. One guitar and a couple of voices, and the idea that you could take it anywhere, travel anywhere, and play to anyone in any situation was appealing because uh, it had been that if you were in a band, you had to have the whole band to sort of make the sound of what it is that you did. So that it had been stripped down to just the two voices and an acoustic guitar was something, I guess, at that point for us a bit novel, and also that was this is early or mid 80s. There were our contemporaries at the time in Toronto, Cowboy Junkies, Blue Rodeo. A lot of these bands were playing more roots oriented music, and discovering or incorporating a lot of country and folk music into their music, amongst other things. But it was, Toronto at that point, you could, there were all these smaller venues and you could sort of graduate to bigger rooms. So we started at this place called the Beverage Room in at the Spadina Hotel, which was maybe 50 seats, 50 people. We took over the evening from our friend Andrew Cash, who Andy had been singing with. and he went off to make his first solo record. And it was Monday night. It was early. We were done by probably 10 o'clock at night. It was like, $5 cover, and we just started it, and it slowly evolved, and we started playing. There's a bigger room upstairs, called the Cabana Room, which maybe fit 150, 200 people. And from there, we went to the Rivoli and the Horseshoe, and that's kind of how we evolved.
I was in music retail when the first two albums, I guess three albums maybe, came out, and so I saw the impact that you guys had on fans in Canada at that time, with record sales, and you even did a in store in one of the stores that I was in at that time. Um, Songs like "I Will Give You Everything" and "A Penny More," and I mean, there's countless more. But how do you think those songs? Why are those songs still resonating with people 30 years later? I mean, what is it that makes not just those songs, but all the Skydiggers music? Why do you think 30 years later they're still resonating with people and they still have an impact?
Um, well, I think of my experience with music, Scott, and I feel music is a real marker of where you were and what you were doing at a specific time. So, I think we were very lucky at the bands that I mentioned before. Another band, of course, would be the Tragically Hip. They were another contemporary band, and there's many. You mentioned others. I don't want to exclude any, but we, mid to late '80s, all of a sudden, Much Music, this television station, showing videos, was connecting the entire country, and with videos, and all of a sudden, we were kind of in the right place at the right time. There's no question that we were fortunate and lucky to be in that place in that time. And we had a song that we were signed to Enigma Records, which was run by it was an affiliate of an American company. It was run by Derek Ross. Derek saw us live and heard "I Will Give You Everything" and said, "I can get that song on radio." And he worked radio. That was sort of his thing, really. And we were his first Canadian signing, and he had developed this great rapport with radio and media across the country with Enigma. And we were in the right place at the right time, like I said. And so I feel like those songs are good songs, but that song was given an opportunity to really connect with people. And I think that's the only explanation I can. And then, of course, we went out and we toured and we worked hard to connect with an audience and build on that. So it's not, it's certainly not just luck, but there's no question the timing was a factor.
I mean, you guys weren't exactly, Much Music a lot, and MTV at that time was a lot of, Duran Duran, and you guys weren't exactly Duran Duran or Platinum Blonde or Glass Tiger even. But did you enjoy that kind of stuff? I mean, back then, did you enjoy making videos and doing all that promo and that?
Um, well, I mean, it's funny you say that. I remember our first record cost the same amount as I Will Give You Everything video. I think it was $30,000. So, I mean, there was something absurd about it, like even to us at the time, like 30 grand seemed like, 30 million. It might as well have been $30 million or $300,000. And the question you're asking is, did we enjoy it? I think at the time, it was exciting because it was new, and it was opportunity, and we were ambitious. We wanted to, we were sort of taking on the world with our music, and we found ourselves in this kind of unlikely situation. You dream about it all your lives, and all of a sudden you find yourself making videos and doing interviews and touring across the country and in other countries, whatever. So, I mean, I think initially I would say, yeah, I enjoyed it. And then, of course, like anything, some experiences with videos or promotion are better than others, just like anything in life. And but that video we did, I remember we did it with the filmmaker and by the name of Roy Pike, who was I think by trade he was a DOP. So and we had this idea to do this black and white video on 35 millimeter film, and it's this the video, although we are much younger looking men now, now I look back on it, it's a pretty timeless sort of, there's a timeless aesthetic to it. And certainly if there was any real agenda we had musically, it was to make music that didn't sound like it was made, write songs that were as timeless as possible. So when I was talking earlier about, kind of going back to this, finding old folk songs, old country songs, traditional songs, and the two of us starting the band that way, those were songs that we felt, it's 50 years old, it's 100 years old, it's 300 years old. If it's endured and we can play it in this format as a duo, then it should endure, indefinitely. So, my reference point is off of the band. I thought their music is so timeless, and not to compare the Skydiggers to the band, but that was certainly the goal, was to sound, something that felt as relevant 20 years from that date or 20 years previous.
Yeah. I've never been a big fan. I'm going to have my Neil Young moment here, but I've never been a big fan of companies using music, older music, in commercials. Whether I don't want to hear one of my favorite songs growing up trying to sell me ketchup or potato chips or whatever it happens to be. I will give you everything unless it's done right, and in this case it was done right. I will give you everything being in the Hyundai Canada commercials. Is that something? It didn't feel like they were trying to sell me a car. It felt more like they were trying to sell me Canada, with that song being involved in that.
Yeah.
Something that you had to.
Yeah.
Did they have to ask you permission to do that, to use that song in that?
Yes. Short answer, yes. Although we didn't see the commercial and the video beforehand. They wanted to use the song. They did show it to us before, and I guess we probably could have said no if we didn't like it. And yeah, it was, it's sort of pulling at the heartstrings, isn't it? I see you in your Canucks jersey. And there was. They were in the process of doing. They're an they're a partner with the NHL, so they have, and then they also have a partnership with Connor Bedard, and that our commercial is very much tied into. He's in it, there's old video footage of him. So as one of my friends described it, he said, "Yeah, it's a bit of Josh. It's a bit of an empty net goal." In the end, it was. When we saw it, it was like there was sort of a bit of a sigh of relief in that. Yeah, okay, this is okay. But Scott, it's so different. There would have been like 20 years ago, even probably even 10 years ago. We would have rather, cut our arm off than agreed to do something like that. Well, yeah. But sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. I was wondering what your opinion was on that.
But it's just such a different world now.
Yeah.
And there's I think for us it was like, well, there's no longer much music. There's no longer radio. We put out new music. It's really it of course is the democracy of the internet is an incredible thing, but it's also made for a lot of competition, and it's hard to reach people. So this was a way to do that and to reconnect people with the song and the band. And lo and behold, it totally did. That you saw it, and that, and some people, it totally puts them off, and people have been very vocal and in my face about not liking it. And fair enough. People take ownership of the song, and it's really not our song in a lot of ways. In that sense, that people feel that invested in it. That's I totally get it. And I I would have, and I did agree with your assessment of all of that stuff in the past. But I also realize now that, I think of an incredible artist, Canadian artist, Leslie Feist,
Mhm.
who had, a big break with that song "One Two Three," which was a an Apple ad, and arguably sort of launched her career. Um, and but she made the best of it, and she, and it's different because this is a 35-year-old song that we're talking about that someone wanted to use in a commercial, and I just thought, wow. I think at the time I thought it's incredible that, they actually want to use this song. They're obviously thinking that it's going to identify with a a demographic, because that's, I mean, let's face it, that's what they're in the business of commerce, and that's
Going back to what I said earlier, it still resonates with people all these years later, right? So yeah.
yeah. And there was, I don't, I think so. The process is that there's a there's a company that makes the commercials, and they represent Hyundai, and someone, I think, at the advertising agency was the one that was a big fan, because we've been asked to use that song certainly in lots of movies and television shows in the past, but on a few occasions for commercials, and we said no, uh, for any number of reasons. But this time it just seemed different,
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
so
Different. Like I said, it didn't feel like you were trying to promote a product. It felt like you were trying to promote the country, which was
yeah,
fantastic. Um,
yeah.
you mentioned Leslie Feist. One of my favorite moments in the past few years was when she performed with Tragically Hip at Massey Hall at that Juno thing.
Mhm.
That was incredible. Of anybody that I can picture in my life other than Gord singing with the Hip, Leslie did a phenomenal job that night on that.
Mhm.
Speaking of the Hip, I want to go through, just get away from Skydiggers for a moment and go through some of the stuff that
Mhm.
you've done in the past. You were lucky enough to know Gord very, very well. You were quite close with him and
Yeah.
worked with him. We all know Gord Downie as
Mhm.
a Canadian music hero and Mr. Canada, and the beautiful lyrics and the beautiful music. What was it like just being in the studio with Gordon and watching him, create music and being a part of it with him?
Um, Gord was a Gord was a very open guy. As a creative person, he was always open to ideas and suggestions, and he was very present always. And so, I mean, the Skydiggers, when our first record came out, did a couple of shows with the Tragically Hip. The month our first record came out, in April, 34 years ago now, April of 1990. And we played with them in Montreal, the Spectrum, and then we played with them in Ottawa, at the convention center, I think. So we met. That's where we met, and Gord and Paul Langlois were living in Toronto, and we were both at the time very busy because we were touring bands and doing stuff. But we became friends, and it was really, Paul ended up moving back to Kingston, and Gord was here in Toronto, and Gord was away a lot, and he was connecting with another artistic community in Toronto. And ultimately, when we made Coke Machine Glow, that was his opportunity to use a lot of Toronto artists and people, and it was amazing to participate with him. He was a very generous, creative person, and yeah, very present. Like just always looking for uh, the opportunity to be uh, very honest and real. It was I mean, I'm not. It's hard to do justice to it. Like it's. But I ultimately, I think it's documented on the recordings.
Oh, absolutely. In 2019, you and Andy had both had quite a bit of personal loss in your own lives, and "Let's Get Friendship Right" was the EP, obviously a nod to Gord, correct, on that title, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Amongst others, I mean, both Andy and I lost our fathers as well,
wow.
around that time.
Um, Tell me a bit about the latest record. Let's talk about those, or so should I say records. Two EPs released at separate times, a few months apart. First was Hide Your Light, and then was Bide Your Time. First off, why two separate releases? Why two separate EPs rather than just make a record, put it out?
Well, initially we were going to do it as one vinyl record and release it as one piece. But at the time, I think, and this is maybe if my memory serves me right, it was a byproduct of COVID. Pressing vinyl was taking like 18 months or something crazy. It was so we thought, well, we don't want to wait that long to release this, so we'll release it digitally and we'll release it into sort of separate EPs. And also just knowing, it's kind of like this world with social media is so, it's sort of, it's a never ending, there's this insatiable need for content. And so we thought this would be another way of sort of feeding that, and, trying to connect with our audience. We haven't been, I mean, or I won't. I shouldn't speak for Andy because I think he's better at it than I am. But
Well, he's not.
I
He's
have
not.
very,
He's not here. You can speak for him.
yeah. I sort of have mixed feelings about social media. Like part of me is, I think it's like, the scourge of the world on one hand, and yet it's an amazing way to connect with people. And like what you're doing is super cool. It's just like you're a passionate guy about music and you want to share your love of music. And I think that's also cool. I get, but anyway, those were the two reasons why we decided to do to split it up. And lo and behold, for the vinyl, we had it in about 2.5 months. The backlog and the log jam had ended, and we got it pretty quickly. So we were actually hanging on to it for a long time until the fall. We got it in the summer, and we waited to release it in the fall because we had already made this other plan. But yeah, that was that's that answer.
Skydiggers are spending the summer out on the road. You have a few shows here in Ontario. I saw the one in May 10th at the concert hall with the Sadies and Paul Langlois. We mentioned him from the Hip.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're heading out west, circling back out east in June. Do you guys ever stop touring? Like all these years, is this just something that you're just constantly on the road? I mean, other than I shouldn't ask that because you were forced to stop touring for a few years there.
Yeah, yeah, we were. So it's been nice to get back out and reconnect with. I think people are really happy to be out and being at shows again, and certainly, I think I feel that it's amazing to be back. And I mean, to answer your question, no, we're not always on tour, but we have busier times. The fall up until Christmas is usually a pretty busy time for us. And but like it's often just we get offers or we want to do something, and so it's I mean I would say we probably do anywhere from 30 to 50 shows a year, so it's not like crazy
Yeah.
busy, but it's steady and it's great. And I mean it's the band. I mean we've we've never sounded better. I say that with great humility because we're surrounded by incredible musicians now, and we have this great catalog. I mean, I'll never have an easier gig in my life. Like playing songs that I've written or been I've recorded or written or co-written over the last 35, 40 years, and I love it. Like I love that. I love the communion of people coming together and being distracted from the rest of the world for a little while. I think that's a good energy to be invested in for
Music,
everyone, audience and performer.
music is a charmed life, my friend. It really is. I want to thank you so much for taking the time for hanging out with us in the record player today. May 10th at the concert hall with the Sadies and Paul Langlois. The latest EPs are called Bide Your Time and where'd I go? Bide Your Time and Hide Your Light.
July.
There you go. Appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much. We'll see you down the road, and take care of yourself. Stay safe.
Thank you, and thanks to Heather.
Take care.
Take care.